Hello, Romantics. I'm Sarah Gomez, author, romance lover, and host. You're listening to Romancing the Story, a podcast centered around writing, reading, and story structure, all with a twist of romance. We're at episode 79, and on today's episode, I speak with USA Today bestselling author C.A. Szarek and illustrator Gilbert Perez about collaborating on an illustrated novel, balancing a source material and artistic expression, and the interesting challenges of an illustrated fantasy romance novel. We discussed the process of figuring out the best way to work on the same page to create art and how they've managed it successfully so far. It's also important in finding the right artist with the skills that articulate what is requested and needed in an illustration. Chrissy and Gilbert are currently running a Kickstarter campaign to fund the completion of their illustrated novel. By donating, you can enjoy exclusive perks, including receiving a copy of the book before it's available to the public. Links to connect to C.A. Szarek and Gilbert, where to find their Kickstarter, books, and art, as well as other media mentions, will be listed in the episode description. I do use some Amazon affiliate links, so if you buy through the link, it helps the podcast and is always appreciated. The discussion even took a turn for the nostalgic and heartfelt as we chatted about creating your first piece as a writer and an artist. Chrissy said there's a point where you just have to let your writing go and know it's good enough. Gilbert followed that up with another insight of, if it wasn't for his first piece of art, he wouldn't be where he is today. That one goes out to all my artists, both writers and illustrators. With that said, let's jump right in. Welcome, USA Today bestselling author C.A. Szarek and illustrator and professional comic book artist Gilbert Perez. Yay!
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this today because, I was just talking about, I kind of work in video games. So, conceptual art, comic book stuff is kind of right there in that same kind of stratosphere. So, in case listeners don't know, Chrissy, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Sure. So I kind of write different genres. I have 20 books out and 2 short stories, a couple random anthologies, but I write high fantasy romance, romantic suspense, and Scottish Highlander time travels. So I've been around for a long time. This is a little bit of a different project, but it's really a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about me and my books.
Yeah, and I know you've been on the podcast a couple of times, so it's kind of old hat it now to introduce yourself. So, Gilbert, for listeners who don't know, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and your work in illustration?
Absolutely. So, I've been drawing since I was a kid, but I started doing work professionally in 2019. And that was because my wife, she was like, you have a really strong hand in drawing. I think you would do really good if you put your heart into something. So she challenged me to draw something I really like. And so the first thing that I drew was a Ninja Turtle, was Raphael. And I swear I put so much time and effort into that thing. I posted it on social media and they're like, oh, people they were asking me are you going to draw the other 3 turtles? And I said, sure. So I drew all 4. People were like, let me get a print of that. And I started selling my work, just kind of through word of mouth on Facebook. And then I had never been to a Comic-Con before. And then on one year, I think it was 2021, I just signed up for all of them. And
Wow.
yeah, I signed up to try and sell at them, not knowing anything of what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to do it. And it just kind of it was one of those throw me into the fire sort of things. Mm-hmm. And it just picked up, it snowballed for me. And since then I've been an uncredited inker for Miles Morales, the Spider-Man series. I did some background inking for that. I'm an artist for Marvel and Upper Deck, so I'm doing artist cards for them as well. I do some work for Charter Comics. The two series that I've done is Waiting, and the other one is Fairyman Tales. And I'm the new primary interior artist for Path of the Pale Rider, who's written by Lori Calcaterra, a friend of Chrissy's.
Yep.
I've done some work with Scott Innes. He's the voice actor of Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. I do work for showrunners like Comic-Cons, Big Texas Comic-Con and Hill Country Comic-Con here in town. So I've just been picking up work and doing all kinds of stuff.
I love too that you just kind of dove headfirst into it. Like that is so commendable. Like I love that because that's kind of how my approach is too. Cause I feel like I get analysis paralysis if I like to think about it too much. So yeah. I love that you're just like, why not? Why not? Let's go for it.
Sometimes it backfires though, because it's like I've got all these projects that I've got going all at once, but somehow I managed to stay ahead of it.
That's awesome. So is that your full-time job now? If you
don't no.
Okay.
I'm an architectural designer. That's my day job. I work at a architecture firm called Marmon Mock here in San Antonio.
That is so incredible. And you just do all this other stuff on the side.
Yep. It's for fun.
Well, it's like me too. Unfortunately, I still have to work full time too. So we're in the same, like he and I talk a lot about what we want to do and what we have to do.
Yes. Yes. I find that with a lot of creatives though, just like all across the board, voice actors, illustrators like yourself, Gilbert, and like authors, of course, Chrissy, like we know, it's just like, yeah, this is something I'm just really passionate about. And it's something I do on the side.
Yeah.
And like,
I don't want it to be my side hustle, but it is for now. So I become a millionaire with this book, right?
I do love architecture. I mean, it was either going to be music or it was going to be architecture while I was in school. And I went with architecture and I figured, well, I can still draw. It gives me an opportunity to be creative. And, it's just a different kind of creative.
I agree with you. I write copy. I'm a copywriter for my full-time job. I write websites for small business. So it's in the realm, but it's not. I do love it though. I love my job. I love working with my business owners and writing their websites, but it's not the same. It's like it is a different tap into your creativity.
Yes, that's actually something we were talking about with my kiddo because she's trying to figure out what she wants to be, but she loves to draw, and that was something we were talking about was architecture, or actually, it's the same kind of thing. It's very related. It's like she loves theater too. So like the back end, like figuring out like the dimensions of like the backgrounds for the theater, like how to get all those pieces in place for like set design.
That'd be cool. Site design. That's awesome.
Those are just people that like to figure out how things work.
She's very much like that.
They like to make it happen.
Yeah. And y'all have like such a great handle. People like with your talents and things like that, like with the architecture background, I've noticed like have a good understanding of spatial recognition. So like y'all know how to place stuff like in like when you're composing a picture.
You can tell when things are off.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like that always like is so impressive to me because it just looks always just so good.
It makes it extremely difficult doing the illustration part because you're just constantly criticizing yourself. You're like, oh man, that doesn't look right. Maybe his arm needs to be out a little bit further, but then you tweak it and it's like, that's perfect. So.
Yeah, but that's like the perfectionist, right? And you kind of like with that, just got to get just right. Well, and Gilbert, I was going to ask you, is this like you had mentioned before that you're doing another kind of comic book for someone else, that another author. So do you do this regularly or is this kind of something you're starting to do?
Well, actually her project is going to be my long-term project. It's her name is Lori Calcaterra. She's working on Path of the Pale Rider. That's her story. She's done an excellent job with it. And I want to say she's got maybe like 36 issues planned ahead. She's 5 issues in and I'm the artist for the 5th issue. So she had another artist previously, but I signed contract with her and now we're moving forward and it's just something that we're going to be working on together for a long time.
funny because I met her at Comic-Con. We sat next to each other and we wanted to sit next to each other in October. We're going to, Gilbert's going to Cowtown Comic-Con in Fort Worth. And so that's how I met Lori, and she's really cool. She's given me a lot of tips and tricks too with Kickstarter and stuff I haven't done before. So, but yeah, it was funny that we were both working with Gilbert because we didn't know that before we were having a conversation. So it was funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? I'm working with him too.
Chrissy, is that how you kind of met Gilbert?
No, so how I met Gilbert, well, so he mentioned earlier Charter Comics, Pastime Comics. It's a little comic book shop here in Watauga, close to where I live in North Richland Hills. And it's a long story, so I'll try to abbreviate. I broke my computer. I dropped my laptop. And a writer, as you know, needs a laptop. You can't. I broke the screen on my laptop. So I went to this little mom and pop computer repair shop because I talked to Geek Squad and they gave me bad news. My computer's from 2019. They were like, it's not worth fixing. I'm like, you people are mean. So I went to this little computer repair place. Comic book shop happens to be right next door. So I asked the kid that was helping me out, like, how long am I going to be without a laptop? Well, there was this group of guys and a girl like kind of hanging around in the comic shop, and he was totally ear hustling. His name is Chris. He owns the comic book shop. And he was like, oh, you're an author. I'm an author too. I own the comic book shop next door. And I was like, comic book shop? I'm actually looking for an illustrator. Do you know any illustrators? And so he's like, oh my God, I know a million illustrators. And so I actually followed them over to the comic book shop and we had a whole conversation about Comic-Con. And he showed me some of Gilbert's work that he mentioned, is a story called Waiting. I was like, well, okay, I know he can draw girls because my book has a strong kick-ass heroine. And so we talked a couple of minutes, and then I just pinged Gilbert on Facebook and was like, hey, do you know Chris Hayes? He told me to say hi. I'm looking for an illustrator. And we kind of just went from there. It was like kismet that I went to that little computer shop because now I got Comic-Con and I found Gilbert, and it was like a door that opened. It was like divine, that I went there that one day just because I needed to get a new screen on my computer because
I love too that you're kind of like branching out, and like now that you're kind of going into like Comic-Cons and stuff like that. I mean, obviously you have you'll have an illustrated piece, right? And you have an in-person with Gilbert, but like, it's one of those things I've noticed a lot of authors are doing that more and more. Like, especially like anyone in fantasy, they're tending to go to Comic-Con.
Yeah, I feel like for romance authors, especially, it's almost an untapped market. It's kind of like, what's the number one problem with writing books? A million of them come out every month, right? So discoverability is the problem. So you have to find your audience. And I've been doing this since 2013, and I'm still not sure I found my audience, So it's like, it's one of those things. So my friend who lives in Colorado, she's kind of my ride or die. She was like, Chrissy, you need to do Comic-Con, because she went to a Comic-Con in Denver and there were some authors there. And I'm like, I've heard things. It's like really expensive. I just don't know. And then Chris introduced me to his Comic-Con and the guys that work at Pastime Comics and Charter Comics. And it's like, okay, well, it's not horrifically expensive. Let me give it a shot. And I had a really excellent weekend and had a lot of fun. And it's like, it's kind of finding a different, when you meet a group of people, you're like, these are my people. It's a different aspect of these are my people, because I'm a big nerd at heart anyway. Star Wars, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all that stuff. So, and I started in fantasy, and fantasy is like my heart. So it's like, I was really happy. So we're going to try the Fort Worth one and see how it goes. Right. So it was a lot of fun. And I get to meet Gilbert in person, which is super.
Yeah.
So fun. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That just seems like that's something I'm hearing more and more about other authors going to like comic conventions of some sort, or like specific fantasy and conventions if they're like more fantasy related. And Gilbert, that's got to open up a whole new audience for you too.
It does. That's actually, so Cowtown is where I met Lori there. And I just kind of, I shook her hand, and, I bought her first 3 issues that she had of the comic book, and I was a fan of it instantly. And then later on, she reached out to me, started doing work with her. And then later on, I was doing work with Chris Hayes at Charter Comics. And then all of a sudden Chrissy hit me up, and it was like, man, this community is definitely helping. I reached out to Chris. He was the first person that I actually had talked to. And then he just kind of like shot me all around. It's like, okay, well, you're going to go to, there's Lori, there's Chrissy. And now I'm doing all this work, and I'm I'm extremely happy with it.
It's really
Nice.
cool. It's definitely a community that's not, and I can say the same of romance authors, but the one thing that I being introduced to a new Comic-Con community, it's not like competition. It's, oh yeah, sure, come on. I'll
Yeah.
help you out. Like, let me introduce you to these people. And I just think that's really cool because romance authors are the same way. We don't see each other as, oh my God, no, I don't want, don't read my, she's competition. We're just not like that. We're very welcoming. Yeah, you want to write a book? Come on. We'll teach you how, that kind of thing. And because I feel like with this entertainment, people love what we do because it's an escape from reality and mundane life. And I feel like it's really cool that it's so welcoming and inviting. That was my first experience when I met Chris. I'm like, wow, this guy's really nice. And all the guys that worked at the comic book shop too. And they were like, you want to come sign? We do it all the time. Come on down. And I'm like, okay, can I bring some friends? Let's go. So it's really cool that was like the first thing out of his mouth. It's like, we want you to be successful. And that's not normal, in this world,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So it's really cool.
That is definitely
Network.
true of the people at Charter Comics. I feel like they're very much about helping you out, and if you reach out to them, you take care of them, they'll take care of you. And you go down their aisle at Comic Cons, you can definitely feel like these people are a family. They stay close
Absolutely.
to one another.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
man. That's awesome though. Yeah, we love that kind of like support, especially in being an artist and a creative. That can be very hard. Chrissy, you'd kind of mentioned you'd written 21 books. My goodness, girl. But recently you launched the Kickstarter for an illustrated version of the first book of your fantasy series, Sword's Call.
Mhm.
What made you want to leap into the world of illustration for your books?
Okay, so I totally stole it from a friend. So I can't, it wasn't like some grand idea I had. My really good friend of mine and a very successful author, much bigger deal than me, Lauren Smith, she did one of her Rogue series. It's the League of Rogues, and it is a Regency romance. And when I think comic books, I don't think Regency romance. So I thought it was really cool. And she did, so it's not really a graphic novel. What I'm doing with Gilbert, it's not really a graphic novel. It is really an illustrated version. What it is I selected 24 pivotal scenes that I felt like needed illustrated, and we're doing 24 illustrations. Lauren did 20 in her books. I couldn't get it down to 20. I just couldn't, it was hard. But so I got the idea from her, and it's a nice big 8.5 by 11 book hardback. And like the pictures are interspersed with the content or the copy or the text. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And she's like, yeah, people love it. It's a special edition thing and people love it. So I was like, oh, I want to do that too. I really want to do that. So I thought about it for a little bit, talked to some friends about it. And then that's when like I said, I was just in the thinking stage that day that I met Chris. So like it really was divine. So, yeah. And so I was like, that is a really cool idea. And I feel like fantasy, I'm like, okay, I write different stuff, but I felt like the fantasy would be the best way to go when I was choosing what I wanted to do. So, and Swords Call is my first book ever. And it's kind of like the story of my heart in a way, even though I do write other things. So it felt like the natural choice for the project.
Well, in fantasy, I mean, fantasy is always awesome, but it's really having a moment right now. And
Yeah.
I think that it's so visually to me appealing. Like there's
Yeah.
so much like I mean, like I feel like you could do a lot visually there, right?
Right.
Gilbert, you're gonna have to help me in my layman terms. What's the difference between a comic and an illustrated version?
I think that the comic books, they're more like paneled. I think that's probably the main thing, is that you're dealing with a little bit more of sequential art. So you're breaking down prompts into different portions of panels that you can lay out on a sheet, and it kind of shows you how you get from one point to the next. But with Chrissy, it was more of a description for a single page. And if the description lent itself the opportunity to be paneled, then we took that approach.
Yeah, because we do have some that are paneled because it was a better way to. I asked a lot of Gilbert. I was difficult. There's a lot. So sometimes there's a lot going on in the scenes that we're illustrating. So paneled was the way to go. And I think also to Gilbert's point, to play off what he said, there's no like words. Like in a comic book, the story is all in one place and it has the words on the pictures, right? This is different than that. This is more
Yeah.
portraiture in a way. like you're illustrating one scene. So, it's still the book. The story is there and then one scene. And it's not a graphic novel in the traditional sense where everything is visual. Unfortunately, that'd be insane.
And I think that that's probably like there were some pages that Chrissy had written out, and I would express to her, I think this would be better as a single page rather than breaking it up into panels, or we can break it up into panels like this if you want to do it this way. So I would try to give her options on how she wanted to approach it.
Yeah. And that was good conversation to have because he's the expert in how it ends up being visual. And I gave him the idea, and I probably gave him way too much information because it's really the struggle in translating what I want to see on the page and him understanding that and drawing it is that was really hard for me. Because, think about it in terms of you write this ginormously long book and you have to get like when you write a blurb for the back of the book. That's my least favorite thing as an author is writing the back cover blurb. 95,000 word book, and I got to describe it to you in 150 words. So that's the hard part is, but we did have a lot of conversations like that, and it's good to have those conversations because he could tell me, okay, I think it would be better this way because, as long as you tell me the why, I'm usually so we did change some things, like things I originally said, I think I want it this way. We didn't end up going that way because it was better to do it a different way.
Yeah.
Some of the scenes have a lot going on.
I think initially planning it out was kind of difficult only because like Chrissy says, she's very descriptive. She says she can't draw, but in my mind, I'm like, well, you draw, you just do it differently. You do it with words. So your descriptions are very particular. And you're very particular on how you want things to be looked. So drawing things based off of her prompts, based off of what I thought the description was expressing was totally different than what Chrissy had envisioned. So for the first half of like going through these illustrations, there was a lot of back and forth, sketching, editing, re-editing. And then I realized at a certain point, it's kind of late in the game, but I realized at a certain point, it's better if I just talk to her about everything on the page before I dive into it. Like you're saying that he's sitting on a chair. What does that chair look like? Because I don't want to draw the chair wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because sometimes
but I didn't want to strangle his creativity either. So it's definitely a balance. But there was one we kind of had to really redo because but that's it happens, but I don't want to cause more work either. So it was probably better that we had conversations beforehand because after we did that, I hardly had any changes in several in a row. Like, oh, hey, can you put a sword in her hand? Sure. Oh, wait, he's supposed to be smiling. Stuff like that instead of, oh, that's totally wrong. He's on the wrong side, whatever, that kind of thing. So,
but I was getting down to particulars like, okay, well, what kind of smile is it? Is he like smirking or is he grinning from ear to ear? Or is like, what kind of smile? What kind of upset is he? So.
Yeah. And he was, and I'm like, okay. And then when he asked me for like, what does the chair look like? I just giggled. I'm like, I must be really difficult to work with.
I'm just making sure that I get it right. Cause it does take a lot of time to like get everything, right on the page. So,
and I gotta say, I couldn't be more happy. He's a genius. He really helped me. Like the way that they look, it's beautiful. I can't wait for everyone to see it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've seen some of the illustrations, Gilbert. They are amazing. They are awesome. So yeah, that was kind of part of what I was going to ask was kind of that pre-planning, but it sounds like y'all kind of just figured that out as you went along because I know every author's different too, right? It is truly a collaboration and everyone's different as far as like, I probably would have been like, Gilbert, that looks great. I might have had like little tweaks, but for me, I know that this is Chrissy's baby. So this is definitely what she wants. But like in every author, like I said, is different. So like, I would probably be like, I do that. I fly by the seat of my pants. I'm just like, that looks great. Let's go.
I think towards the middle of drawings through the book, I started to kind of realize that that's what it was for her is, she's very particular about it because it is her baby. So, and I think that's why things changed at a certain point where it's like, okay, before I dive into just drawing what I think you're talking about, let's talk about it first. And, a lot of instances, like if I draw for Lori or if I draw for Chris, they give me like one line prompts. They're like, draw this person standing up, draw this person getting out of the car, draw this person doing this. And so I draw what is described in each little prompt. But Chrissy had
I
like,
gave him a novel.
yeah, she gave me a novel for each page of what she wanted. And so I told her, I was like, girl, we got to figure this out, man. We got to hone it down and
It's like
figure out
new
how
for
you
me
want it.
too, right? So this is the first time I ever did this. So I'm like, and I got to tell you, sitting down to decide what got illustrated was really, really hard for me because all naturally I wanted it all illustrated, right? So I literally put the book on my iPad and stood my iPad up next to me. And I was literally going like this, scrolling through the pages on and then I had my laptop and I was typing. So I didn't know what to tell him to draw. Like it's new for me too. So next time if we do this, he's gonna run screaming from me. Next time if we do this, I know a little bit more on what he needs to do what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? Because we got to the point, like part of it was like I even put like dialogue from the book in some of the descriptions because I thought it would help. Or the descriptions, like there's a scene specifically where Sierra's wearing this really, really pretty dress. So I put like the description that I wrote in the book because I figured it was less work than just retyping all that up. Mm-hmm. But Gilbert still wanted a reference, and that's fine. So I went on the intranets and found something that was what I was thinking. So, but so part of that was me never doing this before. I don't really know but he showed me some of the prompts he gets from other people, and I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, it's like one line. There is a red car. The girl has blonde hair. Yep. And I'm over here like, oh, Sierra's dress has stitching, and it's like just really intricate. But that's, like I said, that's a learning experience for me too. I'll know a little bit better if we do this again, which I'd like to do this again. But it's just like, it's one of those things. I can't wait to have it in my hands and see it.
Oh yeah.
So far,
I too want to see it in my hands. I want to.
So Gilbert, since there's a lot of storytelling going on visually in the illustrations, and like they kind of ran by Chrissy and everything like that, how did you balance staying true to the source material and Chrissy's like asks while adding your own artistic flair?
Okay. So that was something that I kind of told Chrissy in the beginning, is like, I really can't change how I draw. Like she was showing me reference art of like stuff that she likes, or stuff that she's seen before. Like she showed me her friend's book. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, okay. And we were kind of having a discussion on like how she's expecting her book to look. And I told her, I said, I feel like I really can't change how I draw. I feel like everything I draw looks like I drew it. In the beginning, we were establishing like a look for characters. We went through a bunch of different styles for how the characters would be drawn. And the styles were different, but they all looked like they were drawn by me. So to be honest with you, all those versions, we kind of filtered through them. We established one that we liked. And I feel like when I do my drawings, my style gets imprinted on most things that I do. So you will definitely see in the drawings that how I draw it's shown on paper. And I think that works for me. People have reached out to me. I will say that when I do comic books, I tend to get a little bit more grittier. I kind of like my inks to look a little rougher, but this book definitely had a softer touch to it. And it explored some suggestive themes that I've never had to explore before.
I broke him because it's got naughty bits.
Oh, I know, girl. You show me some of them naughty bits. And I was just like, I did not expect to open on a Sunday, no less, you sent them to me. So popped them open right after church. I was just like, well, I didn't expect this today.
Yeah, that was new for me too. So
no, but he did a really good job with stuff he was uncomfortable with. So I broke him.
Gilbert, did she tell you before this? Did she kind of bait and switch you? Did she know you were doing this?
I told him.
Yeah. Okay. She told me. She gave me fair warning, but then when it came to the actual like sexy bits, I really wasn't like, that was probably the part of the book or the page that she gave me that had the least amount of description. And I was like, how come you're not getting detailed here? I need to know what's happening. What's this guy doing to this girl? Tell
Yeah,
me.
you should have seen, you would laugh if you saw our text chain because it's pretty hilarious. The text chain the conversation that we had was pretty hilarious.
I sent her like little gifs of like a dog looking ashamed behind
Yes,
a paw.
hiding behind something.
Just
I was laughing so hard when I was answering him.
Yeah,
never
because
had to draw that stuff before, but it was interesting. And I think even though it was something new to me, I think I captured what she was looking for.
Oh, you did. Those are my favorite 2 pages. Won't lie. Won't lie. My favorite 2 pages. And then my other favorite page is the one where Jordan is teaching anybody who read the book, Jordan is teaching Sierra how to look through her wolf's eyes. That's my other, I love that page. I picked the right artist because he would send me stuff and he's like, "What do you think of this?" And I'm like, "I think it's fantastic." I mean, it's awesome. It's been an experience, but it's been a very positive experience for me. And I'm really happy so far. So I can't wait till it's all done and put together.
yeah. And Chris, you kind of like mentioned this a little bit earlier and kind of honed it down even a little bit more. Given the different mediums of the illustration, how did you figure out which scenes and which pieces of the story or even dialogue were going to be in the actual
Well,
book?
there's no dialogue, so they are just
Oh,
pictures.
okay.
So,
Okay.
but basically I literally started at the beginning of the book and I'm like, okay, what are these pivotal important scenes that need to be shown? And honestly, if I was a millionaire, I probably would have wanted to do a full graphic novel. So it was hard because my friend told me she did 20. Lauren told me she did 20. So I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get this down to 20. And I couldn't get it down to 20. We ended up with 24. But close enough. But so I kind of went through and so part of me was like, okay, does every chapter need to have an illustration? But we didn't end up that way. Some chapters have 2. Sometimes we skip 1. And so I actually have a map that I'm gonna use as kind of like it'll be in there more than once in the chapters that don't have illustrations. So the map of my world that I have that's in the beginning of the book. Naturally you want the opening of the book. So that one was that scene has a lot going on. I was like, Gilbert, I'm sorry. Chapter 1 has a lot going on. And then some of the other ones like battle scenes and stuff are hard to depict and hard to hone down on how to show what you're trying to show. Cause there's a couple scenes that have a lot of characters in them. And I'm like, he's going to kill me and never want to work with me again. There's like 12 people in this scene. So, but
She counted them. And I knew she would, so I put 12 people in there.
Yeah. But I mean, he did a really good job though. Like the one we really had to go back and forth on is there's a scene that's like in chapter 21, I think, and it's where the bad guy gets to one of the castles and there's like a battle going on behind, and then he challenges the Duke and stabs the Duke. So that one was a little bit harder to depict because it was really important that one specific character needed to be in there visually, but that one had a lot going on too. And then of course the big bad guy died scene, when the bad guy dies, spoiler alert, that one had a lot going on too. So it's like and I knew those were going to be challenging, so you have to work with somebody who has the skills like Gilbert, who knows how to articulate that. But I think being that this was my first time and I gave him way too much information, like next time we do this it'll be easier to know what he needs. But to sit down, and I literally had to sit down and thumb through the book. I totally digress on your question. That's what I had to do to figure out what needed to be pictured. Not that I don't know what happens in the book, but it's been a hot minute since I wrote it. And so I literally had to go over it page by page. And then I sat there and debated, and I would start writing. I will say there's 2 or 3 scenes that I wanted included. And then when I looked at the overall big picture, they ended up not getting in there. Just things I decided that didn't need, like when you make a movie, things get cut. Mm-hmm. So stuff like that but I literally had a running Word document and I was going through the book and was like, okay, well, this needs to be shown. This really doesn't need to be shown. So you just go on the pivotal things. And then a couple that are extra that probably didn't need to really be shown, like the lake scene. There's a cute little moment between the hero and heroine, and it really didn't need to be in there, but I'm like, I want it in there. That was the one that I was wondering if I was going to cut, and then I ended up not cutting it.
Well, at the heart, it's still a romance, right? It's a fantasy romance, but we still need a little bit of that, the cutesy stuff. I love that.
Yeah. And there's definitely a couple scenes that are like cutesy that aren't necessarily pivotal to the story.
Yeah, I think there's a good balance in the illustrations of there being sort of action sort of things that are kind of like telling of the story as it's happening, and then of course the intimate scenes.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a pretty good balance.
That's good. That's good. Because literally it took me a couple weeks to put it together because I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And I asked for Lauren, I asked Lauren's advice on how she did it. So kind of took some, words of wisdom there and then wrote everything out. But it was something I agonized over because I want it to be what's in my head, right? It's always in your head. But and then it was definitely the hardest part of the process is trying to decide what needs to get illustrated or what makes the cut.
Mhm.
So for sure. Because it's a long book. It's 94,000 words and some change.
Well, I knew it was a long book, so that's why
Yeah.
I was wondering like how that you honed that down. But I'm glad you kept like the essence really of the story by including some of those, like, of course, the sexy bits, but also like the cutesy bits, because there is like it's not just fantasy, it's also romance. So like I think you need, like you were saying, Gilbert, you do need those like actions. There's a good
Oh, yeah.
balance of like action and some of those like quiet moments that also need to be shown, because
Yeah.
we're also building a relationship between these two. It's not just like you're trying to get to the big bad, because then it's a different genre.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this particular story has of course, I've grown tons as a writer because this is my first book ever. So when people pick it up, I kind of go, "Oh, can you start with book 3? It's better." But I mean, I do know that the story is there, I've even as many times as I read it. It's just when you grow as a writer, and I think probably Gilbert could say the same thing about art. When you look at your earlier art, you're kind of like, but it's
The drama
good.
thing better.
Right, exactly. Because as you grow, I think the process is subconscious for the most part, and you just learn as you grow and you put stories together. And I've done this like tons of times now, but these guys are my firstborn. They're my first babies, my first book babies. And interestingly enough, in this book, the hero is beta. Jordan is a beta hero. He's not an alpha. And he's my only hero like that in 20 books. So because I think that I was learning and I was like, oh, I have to have a strong woman. And I do, all my female characters, all my heroines are strong and snarky. And I wonder where that gave that from. But it's like, it's different, but it is definitely a classic let's save the world story where you gather up the characters for your team and it's good against evil, and we fall in love along the way. So it has all the bells and whistles as far as I'm concerned, as far as like what makes a good fantasy story. And I was still learning about world building and all that stuff at the time when I wrote this book. So, but I feel like it was the best one to start with because it's where I started. So I feel like it was a good way to bring it back and like an ode to my fantasy world. And it's been a lot of fun. So
To start for me too, exploring a different genre in that
right.
sense.
Yeah, true.
Right.
True. And
Right.
you'll have romance authors lined up now, Gilbert.
I know. Prepare yourself. Poor Gilbert. Just prepare yourself. You might have
Bring
to
it on.
You might be drawing a couple more sexy scenes, just FYI.
I was like, oh God, I broke him.
Oh no. But Chrissy, you made a great point. Like, since it's been like it's been a hot minute since you wrote the original book, did anything change? Did you feel like, oh, I can make a little change here that I really wish I could have done a long time ago? Was there anything like that?
No, I haven't really let myself do that.
Okay.
So when this series happens to be in audio, and so when I put it in audio, and I worked with a fantastic voice artist named Ruth Urquhart, and actually Sarah hooked me up with her. So, but when we were preparing to put it in audio, I did that. I went through it, changed it, edited, because I had also grown as a writer at that time too, right? So I feel like this time I'm not going to let myself do that, because it's like, how many times can you, it is what it is. It is a good story. And a lot of people have loved it over the years. So it's just one of those things where you have to let go as an author, and it's hard. It's really hard. Because in one part of me is like, no, I want it to be perfect. But in another part, it is perfect in its imperfection. It is what it is at the time. It is the best skill that I had at that time. My skills are different now. They're better because you grow, but I don't regret what it is. It's a good story. And I love the characters. So, I mean, you just can't keep messing with it.
I mean, that's got to be true too for you as well, Gilbert. Like when you're drawing something, it's like, I got to leave it. It's good. It's fine.
Yeah. I do have to find stopping points because I mean I could detail all day and
Yeah.
just get into it. But at a certain point, you just you look at it and you say, that's pretty good. I like that. That's
Yeah,
done. Yeah.
And I
exactly.
do, and I feel that way. So it came out in 2013. I worked on it for a really, really long time before it was published. And a lot of people don't publish the first thing they've ever written. I was like, yeah, what's wrong with me publishing the first thing I've ever written? So I do still look at it and say it's good. It's pretty good. Like Gilbert just said, I don't look at it and go, oh, that's trash. Like I mean, I worked really hard on that. Is it the best thing I've ever written? Mm, maybe not. I've learned and grown, and when you first start as a writer, you don't know what you're doing. In a lot of ways, you have big ideas and you need to learn how to organize them. But I just feel like I wouldn't be doing this process and making it illustrated if I wasn't proud of it and didn't think it was a good story.
I feel the same way. Like I have my Ninja, I keep looking this way because I'm looking at my Ninja Turtle drawings and they're the first ones that I did. I
So
took them to this last Comic Con I went to and I got to meet and get them signed and drawn on by Kevin Eastman, the creator of the Ninja Turtles. That was a big deal. That was a big
that's
That's
a
deal.
huge
huge. Oh
deal.
my
So
gosh.
I keep looking at them because it's like if it wouldn't have been for those drawings, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
I got you. I feel that too. You like, and like you said that your wife was your inspiration on pushing you
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to go there. And it's like we all need that person to encourage us and
Yeah.
tell us where. And for me, that's my intimate group of girls that I go on writers retreats with. We bounce off each other and we're like, hey, that is good, Chrissy. You are a good writer, and sometimes you need to hear that.
Yeah, because I feel like that is like such a universal creative thing. It's like we get in our own head some days.
Oh,
And we're
absolutely.
just like, we need to put it down, put the pen down, one way or another, whether drawing or writing something, just walk away.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did great. I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, and it's a thing. Like I'll go through even when I'm just writing something new, I'll write a scene and I'll be like, oh, it's okay. Next day I'll be like, oh, that's trash. No one's ever gonna read it. And then so you go through these ups and downs, and then you have to accept it is what it is, and you can always fix it, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
As some famous writer said, you can't edit a blank page, and that goes for drawing too. You
Mhm.
can't fix it unless you drew it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. So, Gilbert, you kind of mentioned this before a little bit, and Chrissy even kind of alluded to it. And listen, when I saw some of the drawings, because she's shared a little bit, um, I noticed like in one particular scene, like Chrissy was saying, there was like 12 people in there.
Yes.
And man, there was a lot going on in that scene, but it was so clean. Like I could tell what was going on. So, like, it was really impressive. So, were there any scenes or elements that were particularly fun or difficult to draw?
That scene was extremely difficult. Only not in the sense that I couldn't draw the characters doing what they needed to. It's just more like making sure that I got the right characters doing the right thing. Because, like I had said before, Chrissy gives a lot of description. So to distinguish each character and what they're doing and how they're doing it, and making sure that the other 12 people in the illustration are doing what they're supposed to do as well was kind of difficult. But overall, I would say beyond that one drawing, the hard time that I had was the intimate scenes, only because I've never done them before.
Mm.
You know, I've not to say that the work that I've done has always been PG-13 because waiting was there was some nudity in there, but that was the first time I ever had to do that for a comic book. I did have fun drawing one scene in particular only because it touched a little bit more into the violent nature of the scene. Like it was like a fight scene. Um,
killing things.
yeah, there was a little bit of the gore, and so there, it involved like the wolf, and the wolf just looks so gritty and dark, and then the next page was very similar, touching up on that. So that was fun. One of the pages that I like the most that I've done was the first page that I did for the book.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. There's a lot going on in that one too.
Oh yeah, that one had a lot going on, but it really demonstrated, what I could do in a fantasy type Lord of the Rings bar type tavern type setting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I drew inspiration from for that first scene. And I didn't tell Chrissy that, but I was looking at like the Lord of the Rings tavern scene, you know, when they
Yeah.
first walk in, and that was pretty cool. The hard part for me overall is color. I'm colorblind, so I have a hard time with colors. Like extremely difficult for me to use colors. But the way that I'm able to do it is on my iPad. I'm able to either pull a reference image and like select the color that I'm thinking I want to use. And sometimes that always doesn't work because I've done it with like let's say I drew a Mortal Kombat, you know, characters on a page before, and my wife told me, "Hey, you knew you colored Sub-Zero purple, right? He's supposed to be blue." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know. That was my mistake." So in a lot of ways, you know, the color is always challenging for me. And even if I have to do like those Marvel trading cards, those are all hand drawn, hand sketched and colored. And that's difficult because I can't pull a color from a source, you know. So I have my, you know, I have my set of markers here.
Wow.
Hey.
That's an inspiration right there. That's awesome.
I have my set of markers. I have a wall of them. And I just ask her, I'm like, okay, I have to draw, let's just say Spider-Man. I need you to pick out the red and the blue for me. And she'll sit down and she'll look at the colors and she'll pick them out for me. It is a long process, but she helps me out a lot.
And see, when he told me that, I was really shocked because I haven't had any problems with any of the colored pages. I think they're awesome, and I haven't said, "Hey, that color's wrong." You know, it's really fantastic. So I was really shocked.
Yeah, that's incredible, Gilbert, that you just kind of worked around it and found a way to kind of like, listen,
Got to make it work.
I know, you got to find a hack some way,
Yeah.
somewhere, right? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So these are all fully colored, right? Or is the
Yes.
whole, oof.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah, and
lot
like I
of,
said, all the ones that I have that we are completed on and we check mark it's done. I haven't had any problems with any colors.
Because she's like signed off on those colors, they're good. The whole image looks great. I tend to like use those same colors.
Well, there's definitely going to be repeats in the color panels because they're wearing the same clothes, you know. And, you know, you get a break there. You're not having to pull in a whole bunch of different colors.
Yeah. I think also if you kind of do it that if you take that approach to coloring the pages and keeping the color similar from page to page, it does kind of help it feel like,
It's a
you know,
theme.
a collective, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Nice composition of illustrations that go together.
so Gilbert, how long does it take you think? Like doing fully illustrations like this?
The hardest part is penciling everything, getting everything in its place. Once that happens, it's smooth sailing. I can ink real fast. Coloring does take a little bit longer, but it's because I like to do all my shadows and shades and stuff. But for the most part, I feel like I could probably do a complete page in a day. And I think I have done that for Chrissy, where
I think so too. Like, well, he shoots me a sketch, we make adjustments, then he finalizes the sketch, and then I'm like, okay, good, we're ready for color, you know.
I've done it to where like I'll send her a completed sketch during my lunch hour. And I go home, I'll ink it, and then maybe about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I send her a colored version.
I'm sleeping. Don't see it till the next day.
Oh my gosh.
He's really dedicated, which is amazing and awesome.
Sometimes I do go to work and I'm tired, but I put my best foot forward at work too. So
Of course. Well, and I think there's something like about like, especially all us creatives who have like the full-time gig on top of it, you know, like I stay up sometimes editing till 2 a.m. in the morning, but I'm just like so excited the next day that I feel so fulfilled by it. So I'm not worried about it. I'm just like, I'll sleep later.
I feel like that too. Like when I write, when I'm really on fire writing a book, I'll stay up late. You don't even look at the clock. You just say, oh my God, I got to go to sleep. I have to work tomorrow. That's what usually happens to me is like an hour will pass. You don't even like, you know, it's 2 hours, you know, and you're like, I can't believe I'm sitting here.
I can do maybe like 2 nights in a row where I stay up till like maybe like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, latest 4. After that, it's like I need to get one night full of sleep because if not, I'm trash.
Yeah, no, I'm too old for that. I'm too old for that. I cannot do that. I've got to get some sleep. But
Same. Guys, we have talked so much about your amazing process together, all this amazing illustrations and the book that's coming out. So where can listeners find your book and how can they connect with you?
Well, okay, so all of my books are available pretty much everywhere, Kobo, Amazon, Google Play, all that, but I also sell them on my website. So I have a whole store on my website. Now, as far as the Swords Call illustrated version, anybody who does the Kickstarter gets it first before it comes out. So I do have a Kickstarter, where I believe you can actually find my website is not terribly difficult. It's cazarek.com. So when you land on my website right now, there's a link right at the top with the countdown for the Kickstarter because it's over October 15th. And anybody who you can go to the Kickstarter right from my website. So people who decide to pledge, there's a whole bunch of different rewards, a whole bunch of different levels. You can get the illustrated edition through the Kickstarter and you will get it first before it releases. So that is the benefit of doing the Kickstarter. And anybody who can't do the Kickstarter, if they would just share it on socials, I would be really appreciative because I get it. Sometimes it's tight. Also, there's some cool exclusive rewards on the Kickstarter that aren't going to be available. Some prints. We picked a couple different prints. We're not going to do them all, but there's going to be a couple that people can choose from, and you're not going to be able to get that anywhere else. So it's an exclusive thing. Also, my little map is going to be on there, and that's also exclusive. You can't get it anywhere else. So just little incentives. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever they're calling themselves these days, Instagram, Threads. I'm everywhere. You can find me on socials. And I'm C.A. Szarek everywhere, which is my initials.
Awesome. And Gilbert, where can listeners find your illustrations and how can they connect with you?
So my tag on all my social media is Gilbert Perez Art. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. I have everything. I have ArtStation, DeviantArt. And then if anybody's interested in reaching out to me, I take all my communication through email, gilbertperezart@gmail.com. If you want to find some of my latest comic book work, it will be pathofthepalewriter.com. I'm working on issue 5. And I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks so much to Chrissy and Gilbert for joining the show. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That way, you're the first to hear new episodes when they drop. And if you get a chance, feel free to leave a review. It helps support the show and allows more opportunity to bring in all kinds of fantastic guests. There's also a link to the YouTube channel in the description if you'd like to see the interviews with some of the guests and see them show off their lovely books. As always, stay safe, be well, and keep writing. Bye!